They say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, but what do you call it when the imitation surpasses the original? Today we're looking at 10 spiritual successor video games that have surpassed the originals. 10. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, a spiritual successor to the Sega's stylish rollerblading game Jet Set Radio, came out in 2023. It's been a while since a game influenced by Jet Set Radio has been seen, as the last time Sega revived the game was in 2012 with an HD remaster on Xbox 360 and PS3. Featuring a similar cel-shaded aesthetic in which you make your mark on pristine walls, and even several musical tracks produced by Jet Set Radio soundtrack composer Hideki Nagamura, Team Reptile's game takes place in a city where crews of graffiti artists rule the streets. In order to rise to the top, you'll need to dance, paint, trick, and face off against the cops inside of a sprawling metropolis. To help you with that, you've got a jetpack strapped to your back that can help you reach tricky areas, and once you're near a graffiti spot, you can activate graffiti mode and start tagging the environment while you're suspended in mid-air. Hit all the marks in sequence, leave your art all over town, and you'll eventually earn enough reputation to challenge a local crew for their territory. 9. Cities Skyline. Cities Skyline was the haven for fans who were fleeing from SimCity. SimCity was a popular franchise for years, but its 2013 installment left the masses wanting. Fans were unhappy with the multiplayer mechanics and network problems preventing them from saving or accessing their files. Several gaming outlets had to delay their reviews of the game because they simply couldn't log on. Cities Skyline's got a healthy boost of activity from players looking to get their city management fix elsewhere. Again, this is a game that's more challenging compared to its predecessor, which was a franchise. However, the last SimCity game that wasn't a mobile game was SimCity 5 from 2013. That sold around 2 million copies by July 2013. By contrast, Cities Skylines had sold 12 million copies as of June 2022. 8. Stardew Valley. If you grew up playing the Harvest Moon games, now known as the Story of Seasons games, this will probably come as no big surprise. Stardew Valley is definitely a spiritual successor to these cozy farming simulators. They both boast the primary farming mechanics, of course, in addition to the 2D graphics, a system to build relationships with the local NPCs, and hobbies like fishing to partake in. Since Story of Seasons is a franchise, whereas Stardew Valley is a standalone game, you could debate about how exactly to quantify which game is more successful. However, Stardew Valley has sold more than 20 million copies. The last game in the Story of Seasons franchise to release significantly before Stardew Valley sold about 256,000 copies in Japan and around 150,000 copies in North America. 7. Lies of P. Bloodborne is one from Software's greatest achievements, but as calls for a sequel fell on deaf ears, the talented creators in the world of gaming production started turning their gears. The result is Lies of P, a haunting rendition of the story of Pinocchio that screams Bloodborne everywhere you look. The decrepit city you begin the game in feels like Yharnam to start. There's also a creepy, monotone woman who helps you level up, and there are obscure and weird happenings going on all over the place that feel just as weird as the ones in Bloodborne. This isn't a stretch, as the developers have admitted to being heavily inspired by From Software's masterpiece. However, what they probably didn't realize is just how good their game would end up being. Lies of P is the superior game in many ways, from the amazing variety in combat to the thankfully comprehensible story and twists it takes. The overall product is tighter, with the same highs and fewer lows, and we may be seeing the new king of the Souls-like in the form of the amazing talents at NeoWiz. 6. Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus came as a spiritual successor to Ico, which was well reviewed but didn't sell well. Both games are 3D puzzle platformers that manage to immerse you into the story and world through beautiful music and visual design. But Shadow of the Colossus is not just a spiritual successor, it can also be considered a prequel to Ico. For several months during and after the game's release, the game's director and lead designer, Fumito Ueda, maintained that the game's status as a prequel was simply his personal take on the game, and not necessarily its canon nature, as he largely intended for players to decide the specifics of the story for themselves. But he confirmed the two do have a connection. Moreover, the shadowy figures which appear in the Shrine of Worship are connected to the shadows which the player must fight in Ico. In total, Ico only sold around 700,000 copies worldwide. By contrast, Shadow of the Colossus sold almost 1 million copies between the original release and its remake. And if you're enjoying this video so far, let me know by hitting that like button. 5. Call of Duty. That's right, the most profitable mainstream video game series of all time, Call of Duty began its existence as a spiritual successor to the critically acclaimed Medal of Honor Allied Assault. After the game marked a high point for the Steven Spielberg-led franchise, 22 members of the development team left and founded Infinity Ward, entering into a relationship with publisher Activision to create a brand new World War II series of their own, Call of Duty. Keeping intact their multiplayer philosophy, the team would give the players the chance to experience the war not only as Americans, but other Allied troops, and surround the main characters with a supporting squad, completing the framework for future COD entries. The same developers would later convince Activision to bankroll Modern Warfare, giving rise to the modern military shooter. 4. Dying Light. Techland, the developers of Dead Island, moved on from the series it became famous for to make Dying Light, a spiritual successor that took many of Dead Island's concepts and upgraded them. It's clear that Techland hasn't forgotten about its time in Banoi, as it's hidden a few nods to it within Dying Light 2's prologue. Dying Light is a spiritual successor to Dead Island, features a day/night cycle which can potentially change how you play the game. During the day is where you'll probably do most of your playtime, completing quests, searching for various loot, and crafting weapons. Nighttime is where you can gain double the amount of experience though, as more difficult enemies prowl the street. Both Dying Light and Dead Island are well loved by fans of zombie games. However, Dying Light is the one touted as the better title, especially when it comes to co-op. 3. Assassin's Creed. The Assassin's Creed series has spent so many years as Ubisoft's flagship series. It may be difficult to recall a time when the Prince of Persia series held the same title, wowing audiences and critics alike every few years. But few likely realize the similarities between the two go far deeper than acrobatic traversal and spry heroes. Assassin's Creed was originally conceived as a spin-off of the Prince of Persia franchise. Originally developed as Prince of Persia Assassins, the game put the player in control of the royal bodyguards meant to protect the titular prince's life. Ultimately, the company felt that the concept was strong enough to stand on its own. While the concept art apparently found its way into Sands of Time, let's hope the prince can find his way back to the top of the heap through similar means. 2. Sleeping Dogs. Sleeping Dogs is one of the best games in its genre. That statement carries a lot of weight, but it's all true nonetheless. As a spiritual sequel to the forgotten true crime series, Sleeping Dogs was gritty and original and provided some of the best melee combat ever put in a game. You play as an undercover cop trying to take down a triad gang, and the majority of the game has you taking on missions from both your commanding officers and the gang you're trying to prove yourself to. This unique back and forth brings to mind stories from films like The Departed, and it's executed masterfully here, with a great main character in Wei Shen to carry along the proceedings. You'll probably be surprised to learn that Sleeping Dogs was at one point in development as a true crime title. Sleeping Dogs was developed by United Front Games. The studio was approached by Activision in 2007 and signed a deal to develop an open-world game. As development went on, however, Activision decided the project would be a good fit to reboot True Crime, and it took on the moniker of True Crime Hong Kong. It was officially unveiled in 2009, but was delayed for refinement. Unfortunately, near the tail end of 2010, Activision announced that True Crime Hong Kong had been cancelled. Square Enix later bought the game and its rights, but not the rights to the True Crime franchise, and transformed Sleeping Dogs into what it is today. Before I move on to the last one, here is a bonus entry. BioShock. This is the spiritual successor to System Shock and managed to outdo its predecessor in just about every way. Coming a full decade after the System Shock series debuted, BioShock took many of the ideas introduced in System Shock and put them to better use in an underwater dystopia called Rapture. From the powers to the themes, everything in BioShock is inspired in part by the predecessor series. However, there's still an ongoing debate about which title is the better one. It's hard to decide. What do you think? Number 1. Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption was the next mega hit in Rockstar's arsenal, and many thought it to be a completely original franchise at the time. However, the reality is, it is the spiritual successor to Red Dead Revolver, a lukewarmly received third-person shooter that involved some slick slow-motion features in the combat, but little else that resembles Rockstar's Western masterpiece. Red Dead Redemption improved in every way over its spiritual predecessor. From storytelling to combat to characters, everything was far better in the reimagining, with the only thing left tacked on being the ability to slow down time and mark your targets while shooting. Going back and playing Red Dead Revolver is quite the task, as it just doesn't hold up to the incredible Red Dead Redemption series, but nonetheless it's a fun little footnote to visit in gaming history. What other spiritual successor games have you played and enjoyed better than the originals? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy gaming content, be sure to check out the videos linked on screen.